Okay, we're back on a Thursday. I'm Jay Fidell. This is ThinkTech. And our program right now at 12 o'clock is Aloha United We Stand. And our special guest is Darryl Vincent. He's with U.S. Vets, and he's a former Marine. Welcome to the show, Darryl.
Thank you for having me today. I appreciate that.
Great to have you here. This is an important topic, and I'm looking forward to our discussion.
Thank you, sir. Good to be here.
We're calling it Veterans and Family Homelessness in Hawaii. Touch all my buttons.
Yes.
You know, love veterans, important.
Yes,
Families are so important
Absolutely.
in our society, and homelessness, critical, serious problem.
Definitely an important problem in Hawaii and across the nation, obviously.
So you are at the intersection of all of these things. It's I was going to say enviable place to be, but I'm not so sure given the problems, the social problems involved. But tell us how you got to where you are.
Absolutely. Well, I've been in Hawaii for over 20 years. I'm originally from New York in the East Coast, D.C. area, and went to college and did one tour enlistment in the Marine Corps. Ended up in Hawaii to visit my mother, who's actually retired Army, and just fell in love with the place and stayed. And I majored in social work and ended up going back to school and eventually getting my master's in social work and worked in the field for the last 20 some odd years. And when U.S. Vets opened out here in 2003, it was just a luck of the draw that I came to interview and was hired as the program manager to open the U.S. Vets location, although U.S. Vets has 11 locations across the nation serving homeless veterans. And I've been with the organization ever since and have worked my way to where I'm at right now to help nationwide, but specifically in Hawaii, homeless veterans and homeless families.
I never met a social worker I didn't like.
Well, we try to do the best we can. Our job is to really, literally work ourselves out of jobs. We want to make sure that we're serving the population that needs us the most and bringing it to the forefront of society that is everyone's responsibility to help the populations that need us.
Yeah, and there's no occupation where it's so clear that you're out there to try to help people.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's many of us doing that.
How has it been for you since 2003? Was it as you expected the day you interviewed, or is it different?
Absolutely not. You know, took the job on and I was literally knew how to set up programs, and I knew there was a homeless problem. I previously had worked at the homeless shelter down at Institute for Human Services. And when it became more veteran specific.
That's the soup kitchen down in on Nimitz, I guess.
That's correct. They do a lot of plethora of services now. And I was able to translate that skill and go to U.S. Vets and help veterans get in our program, set up the structure so they come in homeless and leave with the home and have a job. And I did that, of course, not myself, with a lot of different staff. The complexity, the funding, the things that are needed, no, I did not expect it when I got into it. I got into it just to do the ground floor stuff, and I realized I had to do all these other things to make that happen.
So how do you personally, how do you see homelessness in Hawaii, as a phenomenon within our society?
Well, absolutely. First of all, homelessness, I think I love to always start off with understanding the number one cause for homelessness is poverty. Now, there are many reasons that exasperate homelessness: substance abuse, mental health, lack of affordable housing, lack of jobs. But the reality is poverty will always be the main core of why people end up being homeless. And the reason why I can confidently say that is we have many people that have substance abuse, mental health problems, but still have homes. So that's not the main problem. The main problem is we have to have housing. And in Hawaii, what makes it so different is that we have a very high cost of living. It is this high. So to find affordable housing is very hard for people that are just working a normal job. Forget minimum wage. We need people making livable wages. Not just having jobs, but having careers. And in order to have that, you have to have the opportunity. In order to have the opportunity, it's our job as social workers and the society to provide those opportunities for those that need to. And it's the responsibility of those individuals to take advantage of that opportunity. So we see it in Hawaii as being our calling, that we have to start helping the people that are from Hawaii to make sure that everyone has a home, and we'll continue to advocate for affordable housing in our community and to empower individuals to get jobs, careers, get back to work, and address their social issues.
Can I make a footnote comment?
Sure.
You know, there are other threads in Hawaii that exacerbate these problems.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we have a land system, for example, where we have too little land, too few owners owning too much land.
Correct.
Right? So it tends to raise the price of
Sure.
land. And in an island where land is limited, and where it tends to raise the price of rentals. And we have a system where the construction unions are very powerful, where bureaucracy makes it, delays the construction of housing, and delayed means more expensive because it costs more to go down that delay.
Correct.
The result is that we have a lot of factors that lead to housing that's too expensive, And at the same time, we have a lot of factors such as a kind of tourist labor economy that makes jobs pay less, and as you say, they don't offer careers. So if we could really wake up and focus on trying to reform the land system, or at least the housing system, and trying to reform the economy so that it's a better economy for career jobs
Absolutely.
that pay enough to meet the prices in housing and
That's correct.
occupancy, then we would go a long way to dealing with the problem you identified, which is namely poverty. Poverty means you don't have enough money to pay the bills.
That's correct.
Simple.
That's correct. That's correct. No science in that, exactly. And I totally agree. And what we need to do is bring things like this to the table. See, the social workers are more on the service side of the house. We need the realtors to come to the table. We need the political people to come to the table. We need the community to come to the table. Everyone together plays a part in this, and everyone has an invested interest. Our invested interest is the people getting services. A realtor wants to rent his property. Well, we want to make sure your property is rented and taken care of, and also make it affordable and make sure that we can put some good tenants in there. So we're all for collaborating with the private sector, the governmental sector, the community, to make sure that everyone has an invested interest in solving this problem, because it cannot be solved by one sector.
Are you satisfied with the level of collaboration, actually, Darryl?
Well, I'm satisfied to the point that we've come a long way. You know, a lot of us, first of all, you always got to look internal first. And internal is us as nonprofits and serving homelessness. We needed to make sure we came together and agreed on a strategy of how to do that. And we've been doing that the last couple of years through the Hawaii Interagency Council on Homelessness, through our continuum of care, Partners in Care. We all have finally come together, and we have a system now where it's a coordinated system where when we find a homeless individual, he's going to be assessed for what level of he needs and be referred to the program that suits him best.
Triage.
Exactly, versus all of us doing it in silos. So I am satisfied in terms of we have come a very long way. But you never want to say that the work's over. There's always could be so much be done on a political level.
Not until the last homeless person is off
Absolutely.
the street.
Continue advocacy, continue working with our legislators, continue working with the funding mechanisms, and to continue to working with the community and education. That's why shows like this are so important, to be able to provide some education to people.
And you're important to us because you help us, you know, explain to the public what's really going on. Because I think there's a tendency, see if you agree, in Hawaii to, you know, put it aside. It's unpleasant.
Sure.
It's threatening. So don't think about it.
If we, like human nature, you know, if you're able to put something off that's not so pleasant, you'll put it off. If you're able to turn an eye sometimes, you will. And that's just human nature. And it's our job to keep it right there and say, this is a problem that's not going to go away. And as long as we ignore it, it's just going to get worse. So let's all work on it together.
So one of the things you mentioned is very interesting, because I think about this. It's to identify every homeless person, to know who's out there.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think for a long time, you know, we didn't really do that. We didn't know who was out there. With an emphasis on the word who, you know, his name, where he came from, all that. Sure. Because you need to know personal information if you're going to try to help somebody, especially if they're in dire straits. So that sounds pretty good, but I guess I put the question to you, when you have that information, then theoretically you know more about the scope and the breadth of the problem.
Correct.
And we have a few minutes before our first break, and I wanted to ask you this question. What is the scope and depth and, you know, the breadth of the problem?
The breadth of the problem is we meet individuals, and I would say the majority, again, are either not having enough money or having no money. And then the next percentage is they have a mental health diagnosis or a substance abuse problem, and we have to address those things. So what we do is we literally get that individual and assess his needs or her needs or their needs, and we try to get them to the program that best suits their needs, not giving them things they don't need, but giving them things that they need and they want to get into permanent housing, and surround them around the services that will keep them in that housing, because it's been proven that if a person's housed, it will cost much less to the system, to everyone, to be in that house and get those services they need versus being in the street and using emergency services and those things.
Well, right. It's like going to the emergency room instead of seeing a doctor
Correct.
on a casual, you know, on a scheduled basis. But to offer this thought to you on that same discussion is, seems to me that once you slide down the slippery slope and you and your family, well, actually it's worse in some ways and better in other ways, because families tend to support each other.
Right.
But there you are, you're on the street. And that's got to be traumatic. It's kind of a PTSD of being a civilian homeless and, you know, in a community that doesn't necessarily understand man for man, woman for woman, what is happening to these people. And so you probably have a sense of detachment, disconnection, isolation, rejection by the society at large. And what's probably more, you know, pressurized about it is that you're living in the middle of that community.
Right.
So everything that happens around you is a comparative point. You know, they have a car. I don't have a car.
Right.
They can go to the supermarket. I can't go.
That's correct.
Their kids have these benefits. Mine don't. So, you know, your whole life is a comparison in which you have lost the you know, the ability to compare. And it seems to me that is traumatic, and that, forget about whether the person had a mental problem before he entered the homeless force. After a while, and especially if it's generations a while,
Absolutely.
he's going to have a mental problem because he's disconnected.
Absolutely. Maladaptive behaviors to adapt to situations in order to protect yourself. You do, and you pick up certain traits that may not be healthy, but they're here for survival. I think about when we just have to move residence. That's a big thing for people to be displaced, just to move from one house to another. Can you imagine having to move every 15 minutes or every 3 hours and every 8 hours and being displaced and being told to go here, go there, or being scared of being arrested, or being scared for other people to take your belongings, or protecting your children. These are all the things that you're absolutely correct that play on somebody's psyche that we deal with to make people, hey, trust us. We want you to trust that we're going to help you. And it takes a while sometimes to gain that trust because they have to be on guard. You can't blame anyone for living in the street and being on guard. You know, that's what they have to do to survive. So it's our job to try to break through that and educate society and that person that there's other opportunities.
Yeah. The other thing that comes to mind is the child. As the child grows up in this state of disconnection, if you will, the child is not going to have the same, I'm guessing here, but I'm interested in your thought. The child is not going to have the same relationship with his parents or family. I mean, if it's, you know, extended, you know, uncles, aunts, what have you, that an ordinary child would have. Because at the root of it, the child is also making the comparison. The child is also seeing the society just right out there. And he must, after a while, as a sentient person, he must realize that he's on the low end of that. And he must resent his parents for not being able to give him a fighting chance in the society. Am I right? And there must be a negative effect, a destructive effect in the family relationships with other members of the family.
Sure, and I would defer to the clinicians to make those kind of calls and diagnoses, but what I can say from my perspective on the outside looking in about how that works is that obviously we all know that children coming up need security and stability. We know that. So we know when they're not getting that, which is hard to provide when you're homeless, there's going to be some sort of emotional damage, whether that emotional damage is displaced to the parents, to society, to loved ones. Once again, that's an individual basis that I probably clinicians work with more closely to try to establish those things. But I would imagine it damages relationships with everyone. And it's our job to try to do that healing and making sure people are identified and not discriminated against while they're in that situation. We try to make sure that even if a homeless person is going to school, that they're not discriminated against by the other students, because we already know it's the nature. A big thing that's coming out is bullying. So you can imagine a child being bullied just simply because he's homeless. So we work with the schools and the counselors to make sure that we're making sure these children don't have to be exposed to any more traumatic event that they're already in. And the number one solution to this is get them into housing. And let's get some stability. Get some stability around that child, because that's what they need. They need the security. We all want that as a child. Baby cries, you pick them up, you hold them, stops crying. Security, and that's what children need, and that's what we all need.
Okay, we're going to take a short break.
Sure.
That's Darryl Vincent. He's with U.S. Vets. He's a former Marine. Here we are on Aloha United we stand, and that means, by implication, that Aloha United Way helps Darryl in funding this program. It's a national program, U.S. Vets.
Absolutely.
And we're talking today about veterans and family homelessness in Hawaii. And right after this break, we're going to ask Darryl, what's the difference between the ordinary homelessness and the veteran homelessness? I'm really curious to find out. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Donna Blanchard. I'm the host of Center Stage here on ThinkTech Hawaii. Center Stage airs every Wednesday at 2 o'clock, and of course you can check out our archives on YouTube or on ThinkTech Hawaii anytime you like. Why should you do that? Because this is an arts show that I believe is making a difference in lives. We talk with artists of various ilk. We talk with painters and writers, playwrights, novelists, poets, sculptors, dancers, you name it, directors, actors, of course. And we don't only talk about what people do, but we talk about how they do it. And my favorite part of the conversation, we talk about why they do it. And it's really common on this show to hear people say, wow, I didn't think about it that way. And it's very common to hear people afterwards who have seen the show say the same thing. And I hear all the time that people are inspired by the conversations that we have. So why don't you join us and be inspired too? That's Center Stage on Wednesdays at 2 o'clock. We'll see you.
Okay, we're back, we're live, and I want to make one thing very clear. You can write to us, you can give your questions or comments to Darryl Vincent about these things, and we'd like to hear from you. You can write to us at our Twitter address, ThinkTech HI. We'll read your tweets on the air, and we'll thank you for sending them. Okay, Darryl, I wanted to get into the really important question, which always touches me.
Sure.
I'm the kind of guy when I go into Kaneohe Base, and they welcome me there, I always say, appreciate your service.
Right on.
Because I know that this is not, and sometimes I wish it were. This is not a time of the draft. Mm-hmm. This is a time of volunteering, mm-hmm. And when you have that, somehow the guys in the military are not as enveloped by the public as they are if there's a draft.
Sure.
If it's everybody's business.
Right.
A lot of people can sort of reject, the military. Well, I don't have anything to do with the military, but we all have something to do
Absolutely.
with the military. And so, that makes it more difficult somehow. So you go and you serve in Central Asia, what have you, serve in the Middle East, you put your life and limb at risk. You don't have the feeling that you're being well appreciated back home. It sounds like Vietnam to me, actually. Mm-hmm. And then you come back and you have no money and there's no programs, and you wind up slipping down the slope, and largely without family, so that you're alone. This sounds like a terrible result. So distinguish for me the difference between a veteran who's homeless and an ordinary family that's homeless.
Sure. Usually the best way I can define that is usually to kind of relate it to two different things. One is, let's first talk about the combat veteran that has seen combat, that has been traumatized, whether they knew it or not, while they're in the military. It's still 48% of probably close to 40, it used to be over 50%, our homeless veterans are Vietnam War vets. The reason why we believe that there's a higher percentage is there's a correlation between one, back then, veterans were not treated with the same reverence they're treated with right now. So when they came back, they were disconnected anyway because they weren't treated with that reverence. They didn't know about services. Services were not as robust as they are right now. PTSD wasn't identified the way it's identified right now. So years later, you're seeing the effects of that, the disconnect. We are learned from our Vietnam brothers, and we're still serving the Vietnam brothers and sisters that have served and saying, welcome home now. We're here, we want to give you the service.
Gee, they have to be on in years already.
Absolutely. They're aging out. You're absolutely correct. And we're seeing a rise in the veterans that came after that and the ones that are getting out of the military right now. And a lot of that disconnect, if they're, again, the combat vet that has undiagnosed things that have happened in the military, and they come out and then it all of a sudden reveals itself when they're at home and they get into problems with their wife or problems with their children, and now they find themselves in a domestic situation. Now they no longer have that support system of the military used to be, and maybe not aware of their services and the benefits that they have. That's where we come in. Our job is to make people aware and educate them. So the difference between them and, let's say, an ordinary one is that they're coming out of an environment where that was more so, at least they knew what it was. And now they have to go out and say, where are these services at and where they are, and they're not educated on that.
What about the Veterans Administration? I mean, there's
Sure.
a lot of talk about them, but did they play a role in this? Can they help?
Oh, they play a big role. They're our #1 funder and our #1 partner. So the Department of Veteran Affairs funds programs across the nation of per diem. They have every VA now has a homeless department, and their job is to serve homeless veterans, and they fund nonprofits to house and provide service, and they do the clinical services as well. So they've made it the primary focus, and across the nation, everyone's working towards getting to zero in the next year to make sure that we end veteran homelessness, to make sure there's no homeless veteran on the street across the nation. When I got into this in 2003, they used to quote the numbers in 250,000 homeless veterans on the street. Right now, we're in the 50,000 range nationwide. and we're learning
already
how
dropped
to.
by
It's dropped.
80%.
It's dropped considerably because there's been a considerable effort with the HUD-VASH, which is permanent housing vouchers, the per diem beds, and partnering with the community to get this done. The other thing of the veterans getting out of the military is that some get out on their own volition, some are getting out because it's time to get out, meaning they're cutting down and downsizing. They may not be properly prepared, although the military is now doing great work in doing transition classes to try to expose people. The reality is they still have to match their skill set with a civilian job. They're no longer getting the benefit of the BEQ and the medical and all these things. And in Hawaii, those things, they're getting extra money to do that. Now they get out of Hawaii and they're making a job for $10 an hour, $11 an hour, and they have to survive now. Things can exasperate, things can happen very quickly. Sometimes it has nothing to do with just substance abuse or mental health. It's strictly economic. And they find themselves in those situations, and it's our job, again, to educate people on the services and what we can do to make sure they don't end up homeless. That's our job. We don't want them to come out. We don't want them to come to us. We want to catch them right when they get out of the military. Here's the things that we can do to set you up to make sure that you're doing the right thing. So I think that's the biggest difference if I had to point it out. After that, I think there's a lot of commonalities. I like to separate it between combat vet, then vets just coming out who served. I don't like to use the misnomer of, well, they're so used to having everything given to them. That's not true because nothing's given. They've earned it. They had a chow hall. They had those things. They still had a job to do. Were they used to the structure? Absolutely. Were they going to get fed and paid no matter what? Absolutely. But it's not just about the structure. It's coming out and now translating those skills and making that own structure for themselves and what services they are entitled to and they've earned.
And education can help a lot.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And a lot of them are taking better advantage of the education benefits. I mean, it's great benefits they get now for being in the military and going to school can further their career. So I think the military and the Department of Veteran Affairs and nonprofits are slowly but surely combining our efforts to say, let's make people more aware and educated, and that can cut the numbers down a lot. If you can catch them, just educate them on what their opportunities are.
Yeah, there was something in the paper recently about prisoners in federal prisons, that the president wants to give them education. He wants to include them in college programs so that when they get out, they have a college degree, because it means a lot in the marketplace. And if you don't have it, that means a lot too.
Absolutely.
But you know, one thing about this is it's that critical moment. And I get that at one moment you find that what's in your bank account or in your pocket isn't enough to pay the rent. And it's really simple. You can't pay the rent.
Right.
And you don't have resources to make up what you need. So you lose your place that you're living in.
That's correct.
And it's so simple.
Yes.
And bingo, you're on the street. You have to be on the street. There's no place to go.
That's correct. That's correct. And it's our job, thank God, through our programs, we have now funds that are funded by the VA to our program. We call it Supportive Service Veterans Families Grant. If somebody is living in their home and about to be evicted, we now can help them pay that rent to keep them in their home and give them services to get back on their feet so they don't ever lose their home. And that's how we're going to end this thing. We have to stop the floodgate. So, because every time we place a veteran in housing, if one's coming out, you're never going to end this thing. You got to make sure that when one's going out, we got to keep them in there. And when they're getting out of the military, we got to make sure they go to the VA, get exposed to the services they need, whether it be mental health, whether it be substance abuse, whether it be housing, whether it be just counseling or just medical. Let them go there and start treating things and getting it from day one, know what they're exposed to, so therefore we can help before they get to the point they don't have to come to our homeless program.
Yeah. So they're critical junctures, and you have to be there. You have to know what those junctures are.
That's
you
correct.
have to be armed with programs that will have a positive effect at those junctures and act.
That's correct.
This is really, it's a good approach, because
Yes, sir.
it's sort of like we have this program about energy, and we always talk about the negawatt moment. The best watt is the one you don't use.
Okay.
The best homeless person is the one that never gets homeless.
That's correct. That's correct. That is absolutely correct. Yeah, but we can prevent it. I think we can stop it. You know, that's the key. We can identify everyone now and work with them and prevent the others.
So, Darryl, how do you spend your day? What programs are you involved in? What do you do? Just tell us how your day goes.
Sure. So, I have national oversight, so I work with all the sites, but specifically in Hawaii, I have an office. We have an office downtown and at Barbers Point, and I oversee the Veterans Program. We have 2 executive directors that work directly, Kim Cook and Gladys, who oversee the day-to-day operations. My job as the Chief Operating Officer is to make sure I'm removing all barriers and all the things they need to do their job. If they need the funding, I need to make sure the funding's being stable. I need to work with the funders. I need to make sure that they're getting the things they need to serve their staff, who can then serve those veterans. And my job is to also make sure I'm educating and doing things like this, bringing it to the public so everybody understands what the problem is. So therefore, the people that are working with me can do the real work. The real work's going back there. I get to sit up and talk with you and do advocacy and talk to funders and plead the case and make it happen. But the reality is that I go back and pass that information on to them and make sure they get what they need to see these veterans, to bring them in off the street, to have the money to put in the gas tank, to get in the van, to drive around the island, to literally pick people up, put them in the car, put them in the bed, feed them, give them the counseling services, and get them into permanent housing immediately. That's my job, to remove those barriers and those roadblocks for everyone across the nation, but I'm living here in Hawaii, so obviously I have a better focus here in Hawaii as well.
You love your job?
Yes, sir. I'm very passionate about the job. I think it's a blessing to be able to do something that you are passionate about and earn a living with it. And I hope one day to work myself out of a job, and I sincerely mean that, meaning the job will be different. I still want to be able to help people, but I don't have to help them with homelessness. I can help them to make sure that they're getting the jobs they want, staying in their house and doing other things.
You think it's possible to actually get every homeless person off the street? I mean, like, completely solve the problem so you just never see any homeless anymore?
Well, we always say we work to zero, or they call it functional zero. So will there ever be anyone that falls into homelessness? Absolutely. What we're saying when we say we can solve the problem is that when they fall into homelessness, we immediately identify them. We know their name. We know, they know where to go. I get put out. Somehow they got missed, that they didn't do prevention. They literally become homeless, because some will. They literally know where to go, get an assessment, and we rapidly house them immediately. So as long as we have the resources to match how many people are becoming homeless, then yes, we're at zero. We're not ever saying, when people say, well, you get to zero, can we ever walk on the street and never see anybody? That's unrealistic to say that one day you can walk on the street and there will be no one. What you can say is it's going to be diminished. There's going to be a system in place that one person will be identified, going to a place and be rapidly rehoused. So when the next person comes, the same thing can happen if we can't prevent it. First, we want to prevent it. But if it doesn't prevent it, the system is in place to respond to that. So yes, we can get to zero, functional zero, where our permanent housing placement rate is greater than the need of the people on the street.
Yeah, so that if he goes homeless, you'll catch him soon.
Immediately.
You know, I mean, it seems to me the most corrosive aspect is when you have generational homelessness.
Yes.
Because it hardens up somehow. It becomes more difficult to deal with it and solve it. Yeah.
Like anything else, the longer you do it, the harder it is to break. So if we can break it earlier, then it becomes, when people become homeless, it becomes generational, that's their way. And we have to show another way. And I always believe, people want to be homeless. People want to be homeless if they don't know they have other opportunities.
Right.
There are people, they don't want, yes, I can say I go to, I don't want anything, but that's because they haven't been educated yet, and or we have to break through the trust barrier of, this is for real. This is now, we don't want anything from you. A lot of times they're on guard about that, and that's our job.
Yeah, there's a place for you.
That's correct.
We'll help you find the place.
That's correct.
You know, so you spoke before about trying to catch it before it happened, and being, you know, right there at that spot with all the resources you need to catch it, and you can do so much that way. But after this break, I want to ask you, can you apply the same kind of, aggressive style, that same kind of, we're not going to let this continue a moment longer, for people who are already homeless? How do you do that? What kinds of programs?
Sure.
Okay. It's Darryl Vincent, U.S. Vets. He's in the National Oversight Committee.
Yeah, Chief Operating Officer.
Chief Operating Officer.
That's right.
And he's a Marine himself. We're talking about United, Aloha United We Stand, and how they support U.S. vets and other similar homeless organizations. And we're talking today about veterans and family members who are homeless in Hawaii, what we do about it. We'll be right back.
Aloha, my name is Miley Scarpino, and I'm the host of the Empower Hour. If you're interested in health, nutrition, fitness, here on the island of Oahu, want to learn more about places to train at or different trainers available, then watch my show on Fridays at 3. We have a great time, and I hope that you'll come join us. Much aloha. Now go get swole.
Aloha, my name is PJ, and I'm the host of Hawaii Sports Update. I am very interested in local sports, and that's why I host the Hawaii Sports Update show. I bring in guests from Hawaii. I bring in guests from UH. I bring in guests from the community. I bring in big names. I bring in small names. I bring in all names that are community related and doing positive things, sports related in the community. Come join me every Tuesday at 1 p.m. here on Hawaii Sports Update. You can also join me on my golf tournament, the first annual PJ Sports Radio Show golf tournament. It's going to be held at Coral Creek. For any information, go to ThinkTech Hawaii, INC, and friend us. The PayPal and a summary of the event will be right there available for you. And don't forget to tweet us.
Okay, we're back. We're live. We're here with Darryl Vincent, U.S. Vets, and we're talking about veterans and family homeless in Hawaii. So, before, I was really stirred by that idea that you catch them before they fall down the slope, because it's so much easier that way, so much less risk for them, for everybody. But now, let's assume for a moment they've fallen down the slope. And I guess you could differentiate between a vet who has a family and who doesn't, although I suppose by the time the vet falls down the slope, his family is gone. They've had a divorce, his wife is unhappy, she doesn't want to expose the children, so she goes back to mama.
Sometimes,
whatever it is. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But anyway, so whether it's individual or a family, now they're here in Hawaii. How do we catch them? How do we identify them? How do we help them? How do we minimize the time they're on the street?
Well, the good thing about this is that through funding mechanisms like Aloha United Way that funds some of our programs in U.S. Vets and does poverty prevention and the safety net program, where literally we're taking our funds and we're funding outreach people to go out and reach these individuals, identify them, and to assess them. And one of our programs that the Aloha United Way funds through our family shelter is that they actually fund to treat a person and the family that's involved in the substance abuse. So an individual's involved in substance abuse, not just treating the individual, but treating the family as well. In the last 5 years, they probably served over 500 people, and the goal is to reduce substance use, to abstain from it. And we couldn't do this without these funding mechanisms like from Aloha United Way that are saying we need to tackle this and have an assertive effort with some tangible, measurable outcomes. We're giving you this. This is what we need to see. Are you efficient? Are you effective in it?
Follow up.
Follow up and having outcomes based, not just outputs, but actually outcomes. Things that we're saying as a result of our intervention, as a result of our strategies of going out, identifying, assessing, putting into programs, coming out of programs. And we're lucky at U.S. Vets, we have a different array of programs to serve someone who just needs to get into housing, or to serve someone that has a substance abuse problem or a mental health problem or just needs a job. We don't have one size fit all.
All the subtypes.
That's
Okay.
correct. That's
so
correct.
Tell us about your programs.
So the one at Barbers Point is a homeless veterans program. We have a bunch of programs, but the homeless veterans program, the bread and butter, is a 100-bed program, plus we also have 15 female veteran beds as well. And they literally come in from the streets, and we put them in a program. We have 8 different tracks they can go through, anywhere from substance abuse
They gotta
back to
walk
work.
in.
Well, we come pick them up and they come in. We find them.
Okay, that means you mentioned a van.
That's correct.
You go out and you know they're there, you bring the van, and somebody, one of your people in the van, or slides the door open and says, we can help you.
Literally. That's literally how it happens. They're literally going around to where homeless people may be and engaging and getting them to come in for services. Or we're working with other agencies that are calling us and saying, we have a veteran that's in our program, can you help them? They come to our program, we assess them, we put them on the proper track that fits their needs. The goal is to put them into permanent housing.
How do you get them to trust you? You could slide the door open and they can say, no, thank you very much.
Right.
How do you bring them in?
It's a process, that's what social workers are trained in. We have a great outreach team that starts off with just trying to engage with the person, not necessarily promising the world and not asking for anything. Just engaging and saying, what do you need? Can we give you some help? And it's a process. Sometimes it takes 20 attempts. Sometimes it takes 1 attempt. Sometimes you catch the person at the right day. Sometimes you catch them on the wrong day. It's being diligent in what we're doing and never taking no as the final answer, but walking away and saying, I'll try another day. You never want to push anything on people. They have the right to choose what they want to do. Our job is to provide them the opportunity, and we're able to do that through funding like from Aloha United Way that also does it with the families out in Waianae. Same concept. We're reaching out to families, we're bringing them in, we're giving the services. It's up to them to access that and for us to make sure they have the opportunity to access that.
So when you drive the van by and the homeless person says, no, thank you, you're still having a conversation with him.
Sure.
And you're still, trying to develop rapport with him.
That's correct.
So that when you drive the van by the next time, a day or two later,
That's right.
you continue the conversation, and maybe
Continue.
there's something to build there.
Not a strange face, and the magic answer is, what can I do for you?
Yeah.
You know, sometimes we're so busy trying to say, this is what we have, versus just ask the simple question, is there anything I can do for you? You know, let's work on the things that you want me to do and see if I'm able to perform on those. And then when you're able to perform on that, it may be as simply as saying, hey, I just want to get a meal today. And we have funds, thanks to programs like A Low Night Away, to maybe buy a meal that day. And it's not trying to buy them, it's just building trust. And he needed a meal, and we have the funds to do that. So why would we not engage in that manner and then say, okay, let's move to the next step? Man, you know, this is something you can do every day. You get fed every day. You know, come to the program, we give you a bed to sleep in.
Well,
Not ready yet.
You know, before we started the program, I told you about my use of the term repatriation.
Yes, sir.
Which some people, they don't think it applies. But I mean, I think that they're out there, they're disconnected, they're alienated, and you have to reach out. You have to offer them a connection back to the home, to the larger community.
Correct.
Offer them a connection. And every little thing you do, I mean, in the name of socializing them is a step forward.
That's correct.
Even if you don't actually solve the problem that day.
That's correct. You got to live the fight another day. You have to take maybe little baby steps, and then hopefully it will get the outcome that we're looking for.
So how do you pick the people in the van? Are they all trained social workers?
Absolutely.
Is that right? Okay.
Well, they're trained in some aspect of social work. Usually there is somebody veteran themselves. So we like the peer approach. A veteran, and maybe a veteran that was formerly homeless. So he can go out and he can relate. He understands that it's not just about getting you off the street. It's about engaging with that and really caring and being concerned about what their needs are. So normally we have a team that matches a social worker with peer support and with somebody who can do the administrative skills. A team of 3 is usually what we like to have. And they all have their skill set, and they all pick what's the best person to talk to the person, and they're making sure they're tracking what needs to be done. And it's a team approach, and they get it done. And they're trained to how to engage with individuals living in the street and or that have mental health, substance abuse, and or just a veteran that you want to try to get engaged with and build the rapport, as you mentioned earlier.
It's a matter of humanity first.
Absolutely. That's the key.
So now let's say my homeless friend agrees to go with the van.
Okay.
And you're going to take them to your facility. What's that experience like?
Well, they'll come in if they're going either one of our programs, whether it's the family shelter in Waianae or it's the program at Barbers Point. Usually when you come in and get an assessment. The first thing we want to do is make sure that you're taken care of, you know, fed, showered. Just take care of the basic necessities first before we start. We are forced to ask a bunch of questions and do a bunch of paperwork because that's our funding mechanism. Okay, you got to get these things done, so we have to do those things. We try to spread it out.
You want to have data too, right?
We have to have the data. We need that stuff, but you try to do it in a humane way and not overwhelm. And then because we're so cognizant of that, we think informed care is the best way. People should know what they're getting into. Once we do all the paperwork, a week later, we go back over with them again to ask questions, just to make sure the cobwebs cleared up, they understand what's going on, they had a chance to settle into the program. So literally, they get a bed that night. If I meet a veteran today, and he told me he wanted to come in the program, as I walk downtown right now, I can call the outreach worker and say, I have this veteran, come pick him up. He could be in a bed today. And the same thing at the Waianae shelter. If there's somebody who's homeless on the street and wants to be in a bed today, without any bureaucracy, just simply off their word of I want to get help, we can put them in there and start assessing them, and then deciding maybe if it's not a good fit, where would they go after that, if it's something we can't service. So that's the experience usually. You walk in, get assessed, get a bed, get fed, and we start talking about a case manager, a trained social worker. Yes.
It's not just giving him a bed.
No.
He's in some sort of social structure.
In a social structure, one thing I preach is accountability. The best way to take away someone's dignity is to do for them what they could do for themselves. So we want to make sure that we are able to make people empowered. We're not going to be there forever. We want to work ourselves out of this. We want to make sure they don't ever come back. The first day you walk in, we're talking about a transition plan. This is temporary. How can we get you to somewhere permanent? And we make that very clear because we want to empower them to take power of their lives. But until they can do it, we're going to let you lean on us. No problem with that. That's what we're here for. So we definitely start teaching from day one. Take accountability. We're going to help you with that accountability, and we're going to give you the services that you have selected that you wanted so we can help you get to whatever point B is. And then asking, what is point B for you? Is it home here? Do you want to go back to the main? What is it that you want? And start working towards those goals.
Would you send me back to the mainland?
Well, if somebody had the resources, we would do it like anyone else. We would say, well, first of all, let's talk about how you're going to get there. And when you get there, where are you going? If you're just going there to be homeless, then let's address this right now.
Yeah.
But if you're going to work a job, do what you have to do, and you want to reunite with your family, then why would we not help facilitate you affording to do that on your own? We're not going to go buy it for them, but we would definitely facilitate their need if that's what they wanted to do.
So give me an example of a transition plan that's tailored to the individual.
Well, individual comes in, let's say he has a substance abuse problem that he wants to address. We will enroll him in treatment with one of our partners. We'll also set up a housing plan. We change it from treatment plans to housing plan. What type of housing do you want to get into? I like to get, I'm by myself, I just want a studio. Okay, we write that down. Okay, now let's talk about the steps it takes to get there. Well, what do you need? Well, I'm gonna need first and last months. Okay, let's talk about how we do that. It takes step by step by step. And the reason why we're able to work with them by coming up with their own goals is because what you want to do is identify the discrepancies in what they want and what the behaviors are doing. So if you want this, let's talk about what you need to do to get there. Is your substance use helping you get there? And if the answer is no, then okay, so which one? Let's talk about this. Let's talk about the discrepancy. And they use have an aha. You're right. This is something maybe I need to address if I want this to happen. Or, no, I'm good with that. Okay, if you're good with that, let's continue to talk about what things you can do to help. A lot of people go in from a deficit approach. Let's talk about all things wrong with you versus let's talk about what you're good at. Are you good at this? Are you good at that? Let's maximize that. And let's make sure we focus on that so we can use your strengths to work for you. And the weaknesses will always come up, and we'll address them as they come up. So a transition plan will always look for client-centered. What is it they want? How can we identify some measurable goals that are realistic to get you where you need to go?
So how long does it take for a transition plan to actually be implemented? And do you find people who can't tolerate that amount of time, who can't tolerate being in the shelter, who can't tolerate being in a structure, and they're sort of recidivistic about it?
Absolutely. So every plan is different. We have an average length of stay at U.S. Vets around 7 months, although transitional programs are up to 2 years. So on the average stay, someone will come with us for 7 months at the Veterans Program, and about 70% of them are moving into permanent housing. But we do have a section that we're talking about, the new movement, and we agree with it, is a housing first. We have a Housing First program with the state that we partner with Khalid Plummet Healthcare for the Homeless. We've housed 75 individuals that are in the street that went straight from the street, no program, right into a permanent housing unit. And we've had 0 fall out of that program. We've been operating for a year. A lot of people do not need, nor do they want, to go to a program. They need to just go to their own unit and surround the services around them. So while we still have our program and we use it for those veterans that need that camaraderie, that need that therapeutic milieu, there are some that do not get along with working with a lot of people or being in a room with 2 or 3 other men or women. They need to be in their own unit, and we also want to offer that for them and say, you don't have to go to here. Let's find you your own unit and surround services around there. So the key is to have a menu of choices to pick for what's right for the individual versus making the individual fit into the one thing that you do. You want to make it client-centered, not program-centered.
It's humane, humanity.
That's correct. That's correct. Choices.
I'm very touched, actually. I want to close though with asking you, what is missing? What would you seek? If the governor and the legislature were out there, what would you tell them? What would you ask them to help you implement what you're doing, which I think is wonderful?
Sure. I think we've been lucky enough.
There he is. He's over there.
We're lucky enough that we have the state and the city working together with this homeless problem and along with the nonprofits. If I had to say one thing to everyone, not just the political side of the house, but also the community, also the nonprofits, also the homeless individuals themselves, the message we need to know is that we all play a role in this. And while the government may be the role of funding and making sure those mechanisms are placed, the nonprofit's role is to be good stewards of those money, to make sure that we're doing the proper services, and the client's job is to take advantage of those services. And it's up to the community to embrace this and understand that we cannot just stare away this problem and say, put all the poor people in one section and don't worry about it. Integration is the key to this, not isolation. We need not just have everyone living in one place and this is where they're at. We need to integrate different units all the way across the island that are affordable. Have some affordable units ready for everyone. Build in the mechanisms from the government to put in the place that you can say, hey, if you're gonna build these units, you also have to build these many affordable units as well. You have it in place that the community embraces this. So I would say it's a multifaceted approach with everyone playing a role and not pointing the finger at any one entity to say it's their responsibility. It is all our responsibilities, and I would plead that we stay at the table, continue to stay at the table until we continue to solve this, because it is the solution. We're doing it right now. We're coordinating things, we're working together. We need more funding always. We always say we want more money, but I'm also saying we need to be good stewards of that money and make sure that we're doing things that work. And it's up to us as the nonprofits to make sure that we are maximizing what's being given to us, to make sure we're serving those that need us, and it's up to those clients to take advantage of and gain the trust so they can access those things. Stay at the table, continue to talk, remove the bureaucracy, remove any agendas, and let's say our true mission is to make sure that everyone in Hawaii has a home. We're the Aloha State. It makes no sense that a person can be homeless in Hawaii when we have so much aloha and family for everyone that comes here.
Wish I'd said that. That's Darryl Vincent, powerful stuff. U.S.
you.
vets. Aloha United we stand. Veterans and family members homeless in Hawaii. Well, thank you so much, Darryl.
Thank you for having me, sir.
Wonderful to talk with you.
Thank you.